Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today at this webinar on the Connect to Work program. It's great to have so many of you join us. Before I start with a bit of scene setting and introduce you to our speakers, there's just one piece of housekeeping. So once we've heard from our panelists, there'll be a discussion based on questions from the audience. So I invite you to post your questions in the Q&A function, and we'll get to them later on. So we're here to talk about Connect to Work, but what is it? Connect to Work is a national program, a national supported employment program launched by the Department for Work and Pensions, DWP, and the program is designed to help disabled people, people with health conditions, and those with more complex barriers to work. It's intended to be part of the government's response to tackling the high number of people who are economically inactive, those who are outside the labour market in hidden unemployment. The program uses a high fidelity supported employment model, and this is both the individual placement support, or IPS, and the supported employment quality framework, or SEQF, if you like the acronyms. The model is built around a place, then train, then maintain approach, and is entirely voluntary. The maintain element of the model is what sets it apart from other employment support approaches. There is ongoing support for the individual and their employer to help them stay in work. So Connect to Work is designed to be delivered locally across 43 areas in England, each led by a combined authority or council acting as the accountable body. We might have some joining us today. And that's to ensure that the support is locally tailored and embedded in existing services. So why are we at Learning and Work interested in Connect to Work? We care deeply about helping disabled people and people with health conditions into good jobs, and we know that supported employment works. Our research shows it's one of the most effective ways to help people overcome barriers and stay in work. And we've also seen its impact firsthand in the evaluations that we've led. It can change lives when done well. And at Learning and Work, we've long been calling on the government to aim for an 80% employment rate overall, which they've taken up. To get there, we need to support people who are currently out of work but want to contribute. And Connect to Work could play a big part in that if it's delivered in the right way. We've also worked on 2 recent projects on Connect to Work, and we'll share some of the insights that have come from this. The first is a project on behalf of Central London Forward, undertaking service user research to support the design and delivery of Connect to Work in Central London. And I'll soon pass over to Dr. Jess Elmore, who will provide some insights from that key project. The second project has been in partnership with the Local Government Association, who commissioned Learning and Work to develop a series of top tip guides aimed at supporting local leaders. LGA is planning to publish those guides at the end of June, with a webinar to present the top tips in July. So watch this space, and I encourage you to look out for that too. So that's my scene setting done. To begin the session today, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Jess Elmore, who is the Head of Employment and Better Work here at Learning and Work. Over to you, Jess.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So as Elizabeth said, I'm going to talk briefly about the work we recently completed for Central London Forward. They were interested in finding out how to inform the rollout of Connect to Work in their boroughs, both the immediate rollout this year, but also looking forward to the next 5 years to 2030. I'm going too far into the future. We carried out the research in partnership with Inclusion London and Inclusion Barnet, 2 deaf and disabled people's organisations, and it was funded by the Greater London Authority. I'm going to talk fairly generally and a fairly high level in this presentation, rather than go into too much detail about specific recommendations for Central London Forward. It's also important to note that while Connect to Work has wider eligibility criteria, this research was exclusively focused on the support that Connect to Work could offer to disabled people and those living with long-term health conditions. So what did we do? We carried out some qualitative research with employers, service users, employment support providers, and employer umbrella organisations. We also polled some employers in London and carried out some labour market analysis of the Central London Forward boroughs. We were supported by an advisory board of deaf and disabled people's organisations, and I can't overstate the importance of their involvement, as well as the involvement of Inclusion London and Inclusion Barnet as the experts in disability and health. Some other comments about methods. We tried as hard as we could to be accessible and inclusive throughout the research process. So we produced easy read versions of our recruitment materials. We produced a version in British Sign Language. We used our best attempt to make language inclusive, to make people feel that the research was a safe and inclusive space. And we got a very high response rate from service users and potential service users who were keen to have their voices heard and make sure their opinions were shared. The report placed a central focus on how the Connect to Work programme should approach employer engagement. So it included considerations on strategic planning, commissioning and training. And this really came from the conflicting views we found in the research between employers and the other research participants. So the employers who participated were generally quite confident in their understanding of disability and the support they could offer. While in contrast, service users, providers and employer organisations consistently pointed to a lack of understanding amongst employers of the role of structural barriers in creating disability and how to identify and implement reasonable adjustments. There was therefore a cross-cutting theme that Connect to Work providers need to develop a good understanding of individual employer needs and adapt a personalised approach to engagement. This needs to focus on building trust and creating a non-judgmental space where employers can share their concerns and have those concerns addressed. The service users who took part in the research shared systematic experiences of discrimination and ableism, both with employers and employment support programmes. And their experiences inform the other key consideration that the Connect to Work programme needs to be designed, commissioned, monitored and managed based on a genuine rather than tokenistic social model of disability approach, and to be co-designed with disabled people and people living with long-term health conditions. So if we design and deliver Connect to Work using a social model lens, this means we build on the understanding that programme service users are made disabled by structural barriers, including to having to navigate multiple disconnected systems in their employment journeys. I'll now go through just a few of the key recommendations for outreach. So service user outreach needs to focus on rebuilding relationships of trust with disabled people and people living with health conditions. Outreach messaging for service users should incorporate accessible communication and focus on the wider benefits and support the programme can offer. Employer outreach should use a range of recruitment methods and build relationships of trust, and the messaging for employers should highlight the benefits for employers and the value added by recruiting disabled people and people living with long-term health conditions, both in terms of creating a more diverse workforce, but also meeting recruitment needs. I won't go into too much detail about programme delivery, but I will share a couple of selected insights. So we found that employer specialists should be provided with continuous training on the social model of disability and the disability justice approach, as well as the Equality Act and possible reasonable adjustments and the wider support available to employers and service users. This should include training on taking a trauma-informed approach to supporting service users. There was a note of caution on the integration of work and health. This is obviously a fundamental part of individual placement and support, but some service users were concerned about the intrusion of work into health, and so those conversations that take place in health settings about work need to be carefully managed so people's safe space in health isn't invaded by potential concerns about employment support. It was really important to offer sustained support. Once service users are in a role, employment specialists should continue to support them in setting up reasonable adjustments and negotiating with employers if required. There were particular needs identified for in-work service users, and this seemed to need a slightly different set of skills. So employment specialists needed to be able to gather a full understanding of an individual's work history and negotiate with a wide range of partners, including line managers, HR departments, and unions. We also need to carefully manage the end of support. So while the maintain part of employment support is very careful, some service users were still concerned about what would happen at the end of support. So carefully designed action plans to transition people off the programme are very important. Just to end on a positive note, what I would say is much of what employers and service users wanted and asked for was actually what the supported employment model offered. So it's very encouraging to see that this programme is going to be rolled out across the UK. I'll now hand back to Elizabeth for our next speaker. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jess. And a lot of information to digest there, which shows the complexity of delivering this type of model and all of the things that need to be taken into consideration when you're supporting this cohort group. And just to say that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared afterwards, so you can return to it and maybe sift through some of that information that Jess shared. And also a good point to remind you to submit your questions for the discussion at the end using the Q&A function. And if you had questions based off Jess's talk just then, you have the ability to raise them. So now I'd like to introduce you to our panelists, who we're very lucky to have with us today. We have with us Hilary Patel, who is the Joint Head of the Connect to Work Policy Team within the Department for Work and Pensions. We also have Ramsay Taylor, who is the Supported Employment Manager at Durham County Council, and Charley Hullah, who is generously sharing his lived experience of employment support programs. So each panelist will provide some introductory remarks to share their perspectives, and then we'll head into the Q&A session. So Hilary, would you like to introduce yourself first and provide an overview?
Sure. Hi, everyone. For those people who don't know me, as has already been said, I'm Hilary Patel from the Department of Work and Pensions. Great to see so many people interested in learning more about Connect to Work. So there's been a bit of an introduction to Connect to Work. I haven't done slides because I didn't want to slip into an entire presentation about what Connect to Work is when we're really here to talk about everyone's views and ideas, etc. But just to reiterate the general basics, the government is absolutely committed to helping those people who want to work and can work to get into work in a voluntary way, in a supported way, and really recognises the international and UK evidence base for supported employment. As has already been said, this is a dual model, high fidelity supported employment approach, which means that both of the two main UK models that sit within supported employment, IPS and SEQF, are being used here, and areas are just starting to open their services. So this is an England and Wales service. I think probably most local authorities who are delivering the service are here, but essentially it does cover all of England and Wales. It is it's done in clusters in some areas it's individual authorities, but everywhere in England and Wales gets Connect to Work funding, and areas are agreeing their plans in their partnerships, and then we'll be rolling them out as and when DWP and the areas get agreement that the plans are absolutely robust and credible and will do what everyone is hoping they will do, which is to really help people to get into sustainable employment. And so that's the plan. We have one area that is actually up and running so far, and that covers the West London Alliance partnership, so sub-regional partnership of local authorities in West and to a degree North London, and others have had their plans approved, and we're just waiting for the final things that happen before areas will roll out. But this will roll out through all of England and Wales throughout 2025. We have done a separate arrangement with the two mayoral combined authority areas that have integrated settlement status, so Greater Manchester and the West Midlands, and they have to deliver supported employment, but it doesn't need to be Connect to Work. So both of them are using their Connect to Work funding element to provide bespoke services in their areas. But otherwise, there's a pretty general rule around what Connect to Work is and who it can support, which is a very broad group of anyone who self-declares really as disabled, has a health condition, or has a complex barrier, which some of you will recognize as more traditional disadvantaged group terms, also veterans and others. And then there's a suitability aspect, which is Connect to Work the right program for that person? And most of our local authority delivering this are actually doing a single front door so that they can absolutely ensure that individuals come into a system and then are guided to the right path for them, not necessarily Connect to Work, but just making sure there is a single pathway so people aren't lost in the system. And so we're really excited to see how that works and how that helps to create integrated local area plans. I think that's probably all I'll say for now, and just see where the discussion goes. But thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Hilary, and looking forward to hearing more from you later. And it's great to hear that the integration is at the heart of what a lot of the local areas are doing with the single front door and making sure there's simplicity of a single pathway to help people get to the right support, not just, the first one that they interact with. Thank you. Next up, I'd like to invite Charley to speak. I'll hand her over to you, Charley, now. It would be great to hear about your reflections based on your own experience of employment support.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I live with ankylosing spondylitis, which is a form of inflammatory arthritis that mainly affects my spine and hips. But I also have hypermobility, so too much movement in other joints, and I have neurodivergence as well. And when my health, deteriorated last year, I stopped working for the first time. And it was I'd been working as a contractor, but there was a kind of lack of support there. And when the contract came up, I knew that it was kind of time for a bit of a rethink. And I took some time to kind of get healthy again. I took on some CBT, a referral finally came through. I did some acceptance and commitment therapy. I've been doing meditation and engaging in employment support. The first point of call was obviously I got in touch with the job centre. But yeah, in my honest experience, I dealt with like many different changing people. There was a lot of like kind of disruption initially. I did finally get to work with somebody who I guess was in some way similar to me, had a neurodivergence that he disclosed to me, which kind of made me feel, I guess, a little bit seen. So I kind of built a relationship there, and then I was referred to the work and health program. But I didn't hear back about that for quite a long time, so I chased through my online journal. And then a couple of weeks later, I heard that the program had been closed. That was a shame. And I was then eventually all kind of support with the job centre ceased entirely when I had the capability assessment. I had still wanted to engage at that point, but there seemed to be like no route to kind of continue to. So that's when I stumbled across an advert in my local library for my local council's disability job hub. And that's been really great. I obviously self-referred, and after a bit of a long wait, I've felt like I've been able to kind of access like quite consistent and like tailored support. I guess based on like social model, looking back, I kind of realized that's what's been going on. It's felt like really refreshing and focused on like finding good work, and I guess it's my advisor there understands that lots of different factors in my life affect work. So I've been able to build this like relationship on trust, and I feel like I really enjoy meeting with her and having the opportunity to talk about what is affecting work in my life like more generally, and it feels a bit more linked up than things I've experienced before. I've obviously received all the other kind of usual help with kind of job applications, getting some work experience. So yeah, there's been some like really good positive steps forward lately, which I couldn't see at the end of last year. And I think that's because of all of the things I've been working on in terms of meditation and CBT, but also obviously engaging in like all the employment support I've had. But I think mostly like I could reflect on that I've learned in this process, where I felt like in many ways I've like fallen through the gaps in just not knowing where to go or what to do. I've learned to advocate for myself, and I think that's why I'm able to like speak at this today, because I've had a long journey to figuring out what I need, and I've just been doing that mostly on my own, but lately with the support of my local council's disability job hub. And yeah, I've obviously learned that advocacy is like really essential, and that if you don't yet have that, you need kind of somebody else to help you get there, and that's what I've had with the job hub. And I've been really overwhelmed and confused. So just simply having someone to go to and talk about how spread out and confusing things has been really useful. And I guess I've learned that the quality of like the support depends on yeah, the relationships and being able to see one person kind of consistently. I know that's not always possible, but that's made a real difference. And also that place matters, and that living in a city like London with the housing security insecurity that I experience, it means that every time I move, things are disrupted. So it's really hard to like put down roots and like build relationships and build a relationship with a GP. This is all stuff that's finally coming, but as I look like I have to move again soon, I'm obviously anxious about changing the support that's like currently working. So yeah, I hope that's useful. Thanks.
That's incredibly useful. Thank you, Charlie, and thank you for being so generous and sharing your experience and perspective with us. Really helps to ground our discussion in reality and remind us about the people at the heart of this type of employment support. And I think Charlie has illustrated well that it takes a lot of time, effort, advocacy, and initiative to find the right support. And once you find the right support, the big difference that it can make, which is the opportunity that we're talking about with Connect to Work today. Thank you, Charlie. So lastly, handing over to Ramsay to introduce yourself and share some of the insights from your experience of delivering supported employment programs.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Ramsay Taylor. I'm currently the Supported Employment Manager for Durham County Council, as it says now on the screen. So I've got 15 years of experience now working in supported employment. I started as a job coach. Before that, I was working within adult social care, which gave me a really sort of great grounding before entering supported employment. I worked within the charity sector, and throughout this the past 15 years, I've managed both supported internship programs as well as supported employment services, mainly across York and North Yorkshire previously, and then went on to become an operations manager of supported employment services for the north of England for that particular charity. In 2021, I then joined Durham County Council to manage their brand new supported employment service that was originally funded through ESF. It's now funded through UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and we also delivered the local supported employment initiative, which is funded through DWP with some match funding from the local authority. Connect to Work has taken a lot of the learning from the local supported employment initiative as well as IPSPC, as well as that role. I'm also the Northeast rep for BASE, which is the British Association for Supported Employment, and it's sort of my job to represent the views and our members on the BASE board. I was introduced to BASE probably about 10, 12 years ago. I just sort of went along to a regional meeting that was happening in York, and it really sort of gave me the sort of the initial sort of structures and the guidance that I needed really to help me embed the values of supported employment. At that point, there wasn't a supported employment quality framework, so it was very much values led and based, and then the framework sort of born from there really. It also gave me a bit of an understanding of the culture of what's required when leading a supported employment service as a manager. Before this panel, I was sort of asked around what do I do? What do I consider some of the successes of the program and of supported employment, and what are the challenges? I think leading from that, really one of the main successes really is the culture of the program or the service that you're providing. You've really now got the opportunity to develop a culture of sort of deep inquiry and learning and adaptation. It's an opportunity really for you to practice what you preach, to embed supported employment not just into your local community and with local businesses, but really within your service that you're providing. It's an opportunity for you to start to develop a diverse workforce yourself and really begin to understand the power behind that and the value behind that. And it's also your responsibility, and you have to embed this within your culture as a service to begin to become adaptable to your service need as your service sort of grows and develops over time. I think supported employment ultimately makes you a better leader and a better manager of people. I think there's lots of values and learning that you can take that ultimately then it influences your general sort of day-to-day practice. You've got the ability to and the tools once you start implementing supported employment to break down the service and your own business need as your service then develops. So it's your responsibility, but also you're able to then begin to get the right people with the right skills that are needed for your local demographics or your local stakeholders or employers. I talk a lot about the power of being local. It's really, it's so important that we're representing local people and local employers. So you couldn't just pick up the service that we have in Durham and drop it into London. It just wouldn't work. Every service is slightly different depending on the local needs and the local labour market information that you have. So you need to ensure that you've got local people that are then working and embedded within your service that are also embedded within their local communities. And supported employment practice then allows you to quickly adapt and then shift your operational processes as you then begin to sort of evolve over time. And I think some of the challenges that you'll face with supported employment, I think it's unrealistic for you to go into this thinking that you'll be a fully fledgling service delivering high fidelity within your first 12 months. You've got to understand that it is a journey, and thankfully the Connect to Work program gives us the opportunity to do that. We've got 5 years to really embed supported employment into your local area. Previous contracts and programs that I've worked on, I'm sort of bouncing year on year, looking at 12 months worth of funding, and it's really difficult to really embed supported employment into your local area when you're just dealing with short-term amounts of funding. If you're attending to your fidelity scales and scores alone, then you'll completely miss the mark. This is about ensuring that supported employment fidelity and the values are both intertwined together, because both are equally as important. By doing that, you would then embed continual sort of strengthening day to day. But what it requires from you, if you're implementing supported employment as a leader, is it requires you to be an active leader, and to look at innovation around culture and look at your management practices and your recruitment practices and how you develop and offer workforce development and learning for your staff. And you have to be doing that almost daily. Supported employment allows you to do that. So yeah, thank you very much. And then I'm sure we'll get into lots of other topics under supported employment through the questions. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ramsay. I'm sure you've given people a lot of food for thought for some follow-up questions. And now is the time to ask them. So now that we've heard from the panelists, we'll kick off a discussion based on questions from the audience. And if you've got some burning questions, again, please use the Q&A function that you can find at the bottom to ask those. To kick us off now, this is a question that, Hilary, I might ask you to take the lead on first. So the question is, integration is obviously at the heart of Connect to Work, because you need to provide quite holistic support to individuals facing really complex challenges. But a bit of a concern that some NHS trusts or health services might not be as receptive to attempts to do that. Is there thinking within DWP about how government can help join up those systems and make it a little bit easier for the services that will be delivering Connect to Work?
Yes, and so this is something that we're very aware of, and it is one of the reasons why we've advised authorities delivering and designing their plans that integration with health boards takes a long time, and it isn't enough to just say that you have a named contact. It really does take time, and many areas will take a good number of months to ramp up their service as a result of that. Now, some areas are building on existing partnerships, etc., or maybe partnering with Workwell, etc., but others won't be, and we're very mindful of that. But where we are hearing, so recently I know I've heard of some areas where they are having challenges really making those connections. We are utilizing both the supported employment implementation specialists that DWP seconded in from local authorities and other indeed supported employment providers to help, but also to then directly engage with the Department for Health and Social Care to really make sure that we can try and encourage those links and ensure that the partnerships are working the way they should be. But we are mindful that these will take time, so we don't expect areas to be hitting the ground and meeting peak profiles immediately for this reason. But also Connect to Work IPS is not just about those with, for example, severe mental illness or other things. It is for everyone who is disabled, etc. So there will be other types of integration needed with the third sector organizations, for example, and other areas. And the fidelity part of our work will be mindful of that as well in terms of how we are assessing what is high fidelity in this space.
Brilliant. Thank you, Hilary. That's really helpful. And now a question for Ramsay. So following on from your discussion there about the values and culture that you need to build and embed within the team who is delivering Connect to Work. And obviously it's not just employment specialists and the type of employment support that might look more traditional. It's that engagement with employers and that ongoing continuous support once someone is actually in work as well. So it requires a different set of skills. The question here is about the values that you need to embed within the team and within the program. What are some of the most important values that you've found? Over to you, Ramsay. Although I fear we might have some technical issues. No, sorry, we can't hear at the moment. I'm going to leave you to mull that question over some more, and the magic people behind the scenes might be able to help with the technical issues. But I'll move on to another question in the meantime while we figure that one out. Charley, this is a question for you. What do you think the three aspects that providers need to be thinking about when delivering Connect to Work from your perspective?
So I'd say, when I've had received, I guess, holistic support, I've been able to talk about, just felt comfortable in sharing things that affect work, and I think that's, like I said before, built up kind of trust. And I've been able to kind of be signposted to like housing advocacy through like sharing my experience in other areas of my life. So that's kind of gone a long way to making me feel kind of like that my whole person is seen, I guess. And then I guess that I've received personalized support recently. And that the appointments are like closer to an hour long. So I don't feel kind of like rushed out the door, I guess. And there's an opportunity to like speak on email in the meantime and ask questions and send CVs and ask questions about applications and things like that. And I feel like that continuous support as well. I can get the word out. So that it kind of start before I find work and grow over time, because I often feel like it can be quite like like stop start, and that's can be like really overwhelming, because I feel like then the emphasis kind of put back onto me to know like where to go and like what to ask and to arrange things. And if I don't know what I'm needing at the moment, it can be quite a lot. So just knowing that there's somebody that it won't stop once I get a job, and that if something were to happen or there's a conversation I need to have, like with my local disability job hub now, it seems like it will carry on once I do find work, and that there'll be somewhere to go to ask questions around like disclosure issues and things that come up. So yeah.
Brilliant. And that's one of the key elements and kind of opportunities of Connect to Work. It doesn't, somewhat abandon someone at the end of the support period, aligning when they get into work, but also that ongoing support with navigating work once you're in it and not having to again return to that hard work of advocacy and initiative if there is further support that you need once you are in work. Okay. Looking at the questions here, I think another for Hilary, if I can put you on the spot again, which is thinking about the evaluation of the effectiveness of the program. Obviously, this model has been chosen because it's got a strong evidence base behind it that supported employment and the IPS and the SCQF approaches work. How is DWP setting up the program to evaluate how these individual areas deliver?
Yes, so we are doing a full national evaluation. We haven't fully commissioned it yet, but we expect the evaluation to start at the end of the year or thereabouts, and it will capture things like the types of participants who are coming through, where any drop out, why they drop out, etc., and really sort of capturing participant journey. The digital systems that DWP uses does allow us to stay alongside individuals the entire journey from the moment that they actually are formally started on the program all the way through, and it can track real-time earnings, etc. as well. So we should have quite a good range of information. There's also, authorities are required to collate at the start through expressions of interest, so the part of the referral forms, to really trying to understand the characteristics of individuals as to why they're joining the program, what is it that makes them eligible for the program, for example, and that can again allow us to really sort of track the outcomes. The integrated settlement areas also have to be part of the evaluation to see how the work that they do on supported employment compares to the national program.
Brilliant.
Thank you. While I'm here, I know it's a very technical question, but I know there's a question about which area, like the numbers of areas that have had plans approved and the things.
It'd be great to hear.
Just to get that one off the list. So I can't really say at the moment which areas, the numbers of areas that have had plans approved, because they're all at various stages. And until they have signed their paperwork, nothing is ever fully agreed until, ink is dry on paper. But there is a steady stream of plans that are now at the right level to be able to be signed off. Some are taking a little bit longer, and some areas are newer to delivering supported employment. So, it is a range. As I said, it really will be throughout all of this, the remainder of this calendar year. There isn't a deadline, but obviously we are keen to see areas really starting to support their individuals as soon as possible, but not doing so in a way that harms the effectiveness of the program by rushing it out in the wrong way. So we are, as I said, we're actively working to encourage areas that are a little bit further behind, and we would expect them to start this year meaning the full financial year, but obviously we actually expect them to have signed off their plans and to have at least started to some degree for the end of this calendar year. So that's the plan. But as I said, it's a working collaboration. So we'll see. Nothing, as we know, nothing ever runs linear, but that's the plan.
And with 43 areas to keep track of, I'm sure that
43 in England and 4 in Wales.
That's right. Yes. That's right. Big task. Oh, sorry, Hilary, one more question, just because it's popped up and you're speaking at the moment. Someone has asked whether, so DWP employment programs have key data publicly available. Will Connect to Work performance be similarly publicly available?
Yes, it absolutely will be. There is a loose expectation that probably at the end of the year, it really depends. Like, our ministers are absolutely committed to publishing the data and as soon as possible. But because it's not a universal rollout, because of the phased rollout, it means that there is a risk of not having really robust statistics. So people might end up making conclusions that aren't actually the accurate ones because the data is still too raw. So it's finding the balance of when to get the data out so that we are being transparent and everyone can see, but also mindful of exactly what that's telling us about the program and where this, what exactly the full national picture looks like. But you will see something coming this within this financial year, there will be data, but much before the end of the actual financial year. It's just exactly when is still to be determined, just based on when areas start and the quality of data that's coming back. There's also a little bit of a manual data collection at the start, because the full digital solution is taking a little longer than expected. So again, just getting the right quality of data at the right time, but not waiting for everything to be perfect, which would slow down actually, having a transparent service. So it's coming.
It's coming. Brilliant. Good to hear. Now, Ramsay, hoping that technical issues are magically resolved. I can hear you, I can see you, everything is wonderful. Excellent. So the earlier question was about the types of values to embed in the team to make ConnectWorks successful. So maybe we'll start there, and I've noted another one for you that's come in.
Okay, great. So yeah, based on the values, well, they're all important. So I could be here all day talking about the values. The main ones that I would sort of pick out really is that definitely fall in line as well with the Connect to Work guidance, is around that zero rejection philosophy that you have to embed within your service. It's about believing that everyone, has the right to work, and that they can work with the right support in the right job. By applying that zero rejection philosophy, it stops you screening people based on need or perceived barriers to employment. So you could be working with somebody, or somebody could be referred in that's, say, in their 50s with a really complex learning disability. I think previously, for a lot of programs that have been in existence previously, wouldn't necessarily have supported that customer, but supported employment absolutely would. Because if that person's motivated to work, then we will absolutely support that person and believe that that person can work with the right support in the right job. And that's where you're bringing in things like job matching and job carving, so taking away elements of roles, or looking at what the person can do, and then building a support plan and training plan once that person's in work, to then bridge that skills gap if it exists within that job. And really that sort of falls in line with that. We don't believe in work readiness, and a lot of people in my team probably see, can probably read my facial expressions when we're in meetings and we hear people saying, "Oh, this person isn't job ready," or "They're not work ready." It's just, that doesn't exist. That's not a thing. That if somebody said to me a long time ago, and it's sort of always stayed with me, "Where did you learn to swim?" Well, I learned to swim in the swimming pool. You plunk me in the water and I'll learn to swim. It's the same with work. This is about placing people into work as soon as possible, and then let's provide all of that training and that wraparound support to ensure that that person can then attain and retain that work. So
brilliant, thank you. The next question in the chat that seems relevant for you, Ramsay, is about the role of employers in this. So one kind of focused on, the question of, are employers bought in? And a second one, which was about the many competing priorities and expectations that are on employers currently. So given that employers face a lot of kind of calls on their efforts from work experience placements, apprenticeships, etc., and they need to understand that there's something in it for them. How can we get them to engage with the benefits and opportunity that Connect to Work can offer? Any quick wins or top tips from your experience?
So this is not transactional. This is not a transactional experience that you'll have with employers when you're embedding support and employment. This is about long-term relationships. So this isn't about quick wins and trying to place people or trying to get people to apply for jobs or where there are vacancies as soon as possible. Your employer is equally as important as the service user that's receiving the support employment service. So you've got to apply as much resource and time into employers as you would do for your job seekers. I think it starts before that. I think it's really around recruitment, I don't think you'll ever get someone that wants to come into supported employment because they love working with employers. It's always about the passion for the job seeker, so really looking at, make sure you look at the national occupational standards for supported employment when you're writing your job descriptions, but really planning what skills and experience do I need across my staff team. Yes, you'll want people with adult social care experience or health experience, or people from education. Of course you will, but look at people that have got experience within recruitment and understanding what that business to business service would look like. That way you've always got that value and resource and dedicated time for your employers. So you can really begin to understand what your local employers and what your local labour market is telling you, and you can then adapt to that. Also understand that a supported employment service is not just there to fill a vacancy. There's a much broader and wider service that you can be offering your employers that then begins to be valued by employers, but begins to really build upon that relationship that you have. So within County Durham, we've got a really sort of wide offer of support for employers. So we've got a really robust training offer. So it might be that we start engaging with an employer that they're not quite ready to maybe engage fully with the service. So it might be that we want to go in and do some training. So we've got some neurodiversity versus neurodivergence in the workplace training that we could maybe do, or how to recruit and retain neurodivergent talent or disability talent within your workforce. We could do something like that. Or maybe we could go into your workplace and maybe create something that's quite bespoke based on your current workforce. We also run a session, 6 weekly lunch and learns. That's just available for anyone. So again, you might not be ready yet to fully engage with us. You might not be fully understanding what the supported employment offer is yet. Well, just dial into one of our lunch and learns. And our lunch and learns that we've got within our service aren't just about, they're not just sort of embedding sort of certain practice and learnings. It's around actually this is a lived experience opportunity to really listen to somebody that's maybe been through the service, or listen to a member of the staff that we've got within our supported employment service around how supported employment has ultimately changed their life, or listen to another employer that we work with that maybe is dialing into that lunch and learn. So you can begin to build a much broader and wider offer. We've also got inclusive employer networks that people can come to, again, if they're not quite ready. We have a service podcast as well that they could subscribe and listen to. So again, there's lots of hooks and things that you can begin to get employers on board with, ultimately the wider, ultimately what you want to achieve as part of your supported employment service. So yeah, don't just look at it as there's a vacancy, I can fill it. It's think about the broader offer that you can have as a supported employment service, and the benefits that the business and their wider workforce will then gain from that.
Brilliant. Yeah, really important points there. It's not a transactional one-off interaction. You're building a long-term relationship with a broad range of employers, and the program itself doesn't need to be the only point of contact with these employers. Draw on the wider network that local government in the area or other key organisations already have.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. And that kind of segues nicely into a question that I have for Charley, which is also in the employer space. So Charley, from your perspective, how can employers better support disabled people or people living with health conditions to stay in work once they get into it?
Sure. I think, firstly, you kind of just obviously have to be willing to employ disabled people. And I think that's probably where like the kind of attitude is like really key, because I don't, and in the past, I've not expected like things to be perfect, because I at times don't know what I kind of need. And my health fluctuates, and there are times when like my disease is like really active, and naturally, I guess to like remain working, like things need to like adjust alongside like my capacity. So yeah, just knowing that there's like a willingness to like be open, and there's that understanding there to kind of create solutions. It's probably quite obvious to say, but like as a result of my health conditions and disability, I know that I've got lots of things to offer, and that's true of lots of disabled people. I'm a great problem solver, and despite you know, any challenges I come across, I know that I've got lots to offer in other ways. So if there's a kind of understanding there, that can go a long way to like, just keeping me engaged and feeling like, I'm understood. Um, in my last experience, when I came to stop working, I didn't find out about access to work until like halfway through that job. And because it was such a small company, there wasn't like the resource or money there to like fund lots of the things that came up in like the assessment for access to work. I did get I referred to a mental health coach, which was good, but that kind of carried on after I'd finished the job. It was useful in like navigating like the like hard time of coming to the end of like working. I found that useful, but I wasn't able to like implement like the other stuff, the other support. I know there's lots of like employer sides. I now know, like looking back, there's lots of charities and things that can help. So um, access to work is there to help, like I guess both like me and the employer. So there are lots of obviously like really great things out there. Just getting it started in time, I guess. And then just the knowing that there's that kind of flexibility, and that as my kind of needs change over time, that there's a place to go to talk about these kind of changes, and there's a discussion like I'm able to have, because might not know in that time what I need, but in having a conversation with somebody, I might be able to kind of like figure that out. And that just that being able to speak, I think, goes like a really long way to making me feel kind of understood and heard. And then just to say the last point, I think like my experience is like whatever you do put in place for a disabled person can then benefit everybody else. Like disability can be acquired and health can change. And I know from speaking to lots of friends that it's really interesting conversation we now have about things that come up in their own lives, and just knowing that what the things you put in place for one person can like have like positive like knock-on effects for other people too. Not to be scared that actually there's lots of really great things that disabled people like can bring to the workplace.
I think that's brilliant, Charlie. Yeah, those kind of positive flow-on benefits of the special skills, the special perspectives that are brought, but also that making your workplace more inclusive for one set of people actually makes it much better for everyone who's there. Yeah, wonderful. Looking at the questions that have come in, there are a couple that are related to how Connect to Work will work for migrant or refugee families, and I think this might be best addressed to Hilary. So one question is about someone working with a large number of resettled families. They would probably fit the profile in terms of having health issues, but will they be sanctioned if they choose not to engage with the Connect to Work scheme?
No, and so just to be clear, there's actually 3 eligibility categories for Connect to Work. There's those who class themselves using the social model or otherwise of disability as disabled, those who have health conditions, and whether those are, short-term, long-term, and also those who fit into, as I said before, are sort of disadvantaged groups. And that does include refugees. That you have to have a right to live and work in the UK and be of working age. But otherwise, you could be eligible just on your own, but we all know that most people will have overlaps anyway. Prison leavers, for example, are unlikely to just be prison leavers, for example. And so it's a very broad thing. But to reiterate, first of all, this isn't a job centre programme. So job centres aren't involved in the running of it in any way. But if somebody approaches them, or if they have people who are in their line of sight who might be interested, they can, of course, signpost. Predominantly, this program is aimed at the economically inactive. So people who have never worked, who struggle to work because of their conditions, or have absolutely been off work for 6 months or so, although that's not a hard rule. But it can be for people who do have a work search requirement. There's no requirement to even be on benefits for this program. But if you do have somebody who is on benefits, who does have a work search requirement, they could also be eligible for the program if it's suitable for them. But Connect to Work is voluntary. So whether people take part in it or not has no bearing on any benefit condition, etc. And a supported employment advisor is responsible for reminding people that as you start earning, if you're on benefits, there is the inevitable trade-off between when your benefits reduce and your earnings increase. But that is part of any conversation that has to be had about working. But in theory, most people will be better off through working. And the point of Connect to Work is not to just put people in jobs. It's to find jobs that they want to do that are sustainable and at least minimum wage. So these are open market jobs. They're not non-jobs or jobs that were made just to tick a box. So hopefully, these are people who are being put onto jobs that end up staying in really reputable, profitable for them, jobs.
Yeah. It's about that ongoing outcome for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Right fit. Yeah, sustainable employment is a key principle of supported employment. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And actually that key principle is probably a good point to draw our Q&A to a close. The discussion has been really rich and thought-provoking and insightful from all of our panelists, so thank you again. And while I hate to draw it to a close, we are just about out of time for the webinar today. So thank you to our panelists for joining us and making yourselves available, and to everyone for attending. I hope that today's session has shed some light on what makes Connect to Work such a promising program, and also how we can all make it a success as well. In terms of further information, if you would like to know more about Connect to Work and learning and work in this space, you can sign up to our supporters network, which is the way to be the first to hear about any work underway. And related to that, I'm really happy to say that we'll have a blog from Charley sharing his perspectives and experience coming out soon. So if you sign up using the link now on the screen, that's a way to stay informed. We also have the product of our work with the local government association coming out over the next month or so. So it'll also link you into those top tip guides for Connect to Work when they are available. So thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your days, and hope to hear from you again sometime soon. Thanks so much.